It was a chilly Tuesday evening, and the office was almost deserted, the hum of computers and the occasional ring of a phone filling the empty spaces. I was buried in a mound of paperwork, the glow of my desk lamp a lonely beacon in the dimly lit room. My phone vibrated suddenly, a welcome distraction from the tedium. The screen lit up with a message from Lucy, my wife of 8 years. It read, "I miss you, my love. I can't wait to see you again." A smile unwittingly spread across my face. Her words were a balm to the dull ache of our recent arguments. Curious, I typed back, "Leaving work early. See you soon." The anticipation of surprising her, perhaps with her favorite takeout, spurred me on. The drive home was quicker than usual, the streets mercifully clear of the typical rush-hour traffic. As I turned the key in our front door, the unusual silence of the house struck me. Typically, Lucy would be in the kitchen or lounging on the couch with a book, a soft melody playing in the background. But tonight, the stillness was pervasive, unsettling. "Lucy?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the hallway. No response. I shrugged off my coat, confusion knitting my brow as I walked towards the living room. The sight that greeted me there froze me in my tracks. Lucy was there, indeed. But not alone. She was half naked, her cheeks flushed with a rosy tint, her lips curved in laughter. Beside her, equally disheveled, was a man I recognized as her gym trainer, his arm possessively around her waist. They hadn't noticed my arrival, too caught up in their intimate embrace. The room spun slightly as I stood there, the weight of betrayal sinking deep into my chest. They hadn't noticed my voice was sharp, a crack of thunder in the quiet room. They jolted apart, Lucy's eyes wide with shock. "James! I thought you were working late," she stammered, clutching her robe to her chest. Clearly, I managed through gritted teeth, my gaze locked on the man, who was now awkwardly attempting to straighten his disheveled clothing. "And you took the opportunity to entertain guests?" Lucy's face crumpled, the tears starting to form. "James, I can explain." "What's there to explain?" I cut her off, my heart hardening with each tremulous plea. "I saw everything I needed to see." The trainer, sensing the danger, muttered a quick apology and made his exit, leaving the two of us in the deafening silence of the aftermath. Lucy reached out, her hand trembling. "Please, let's talk about this." I recoiled from her touch, the plans for revenge already forming in my mind. "There's nothing to discuss. You've made your choice." The evening spiraled into a blur of heated accusations and bitter truths. By the end, the decision was irrevocable. We would divorce, and our paths would never cross again. As I left the house that night, the coldness in my heart mirrored the icy winds that whipped through the empty streets, the echo of what was once love replaced by a steely resolve for retribution. The seeds of betrayal had been sown, and I was already plotting how best to break her life, just as she had shattered mine. The morning after discovering Lucy's infidelity was grey and overcast, mirroring the storm that raged within me. My mind churned with the fallout of last night's revelation as I sat at the small cafe down the street from our now fractured home, my coffee untouched and growing cold. The plan for revenge took shape between the ticking of the wall clock and the sporadic bursts of laughter from the other patrons, all oblivious to the turmoil within me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number of an old friend, Mark, who had turned into a savvy divorce attorney. His voice was brisk when he answered, "James? It's been ages. How are you?" "There's no easy way to say this. I need your services," I began, skipping pleasantries. "Lucy's been unfaithful. I walked in on her and another man last night." Mark's professional tone softened slightly. "I'm sorry, James. This must be hard. What are you looking to do?" "I want to ensure the divorce leaves her with nothing." Not out of spite, I added quickly, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true, but I can't just walk away without making her feel some of the pain she's caused. "We'll need proof of her infidelity. Photos, texts, any kind of records you can provide. The more you have, the better position you'll be in," Mark advised. "Consider it done. I'll get you everything by tomorrow." After the call, I drove back to our house to gather the necessary evidence. Lucy wasn't home, likely staying with a friend or her lover, which made my task easier. I sifted through her things, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and a perverse sense of relief as I found more than enough compromising messages and pictures on her tablet and phone, which I had guessed the passcode for after several tries. Later that afternoon, I met with Mark at his office, a folder of printed messages and emails in hand. He flipped through them methodically, his expression unreadable. "This will do," he finally said, looking up. "It's solid evidence. I'll file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. This should expedite the process and work in your favor for the settlement." "Thank you, Mark. I want this over with as soon as possible," I said, feeling a knot loosen in my chest. But as I stood to leave, Mark placed a hand on my shoulder. "James, revenge might seem sweet now, but be sure you can live with yourself after all this is said and done." I nodded, though his words barely registered. My path was set. The week that followed was a blur of legal proceedings and cold exchanges through lawyers. Lucy tried to reach out, to explain, to plead for forgiveness, but I ignored all her attempts. Each ring of my phone was a reminder of her betrayal, fueling my resolve. As the day of the court hearing approached, I prepared myself to face her, to see the realization dawn on her face that her actions had irrevocable consequences. But even as I planned her downfall, a part of me mourned the love we had shared, now tainted and twisted into something unrecognizable. The courthouse was imposing, a stark monolith of stone and cold echoes, much like the resolution settling in my heart. Today, everything would come to a head, the legal battle, the confrontation, and perhaps the closure I so desperately sought. I arrived early, my footsteps echoing through the almost empty hallways. In a quiet corner, I reviewed the texts and photos once more, undeniable evidence of Lucy's betrayal. Each message twisted the knife a bit deeper, reinforcing my resolve. Lucy arrived just as the clerk called us into the courtroom. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usual poised demeanor replaced by a fragile, tremulous presence. She glanced my way, a flicker of hope dying as I looked away. I couldn't afford the luxury of sympathy, not today. "Mr. Reynolds, Ms. Reynolds, please approach," the judge instructed, his voice neutral but authoritative. We stepped forward, Lucy's lawyer at her side, while Mark whispered last-minute assurances to me. The proceedings began with a sterile recitation of facts from both sides. Lucy's lawyer painted a picture of a marriage broken by distance and misunderstanding, not deliberate betrayal. But then it was Mark's turn, and the air in the room thickened, charged with every word he presented. "As you will see, Your Honor, the evidence of Mrs. Reynolds' infidelity is substantial," Mark said, methodically laying out the photos and messages before the court. Lucy flinched with each item displayed, her lawyer's face growing grimmer. When it was her turn to speak, Lucy's voice cracked. "James, I never wanted." "Please address the court, not the plaintiff," the judge interrupted, and she swallowed hard, nodding. "I made a mistake," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't believe it should erase all the years we shared. I am truly sorry, James." Her apology hung in the air, thick and unconvincing. My face remained impassive, my heart armored against her words. The judge listened, his expression unreadable, then announced he would deliver his decision after a short recess. The tension in the room wound tighter as we waited, separated by the few feet of aisle but miles of hurt and betrayal. When we were called back, the judge's voice was firm. "After reviewing the evidence and considering the arguments presented, I find in favor of Mr. Reynolds. The court grants a divorce on the grounds of adultery with substantial evidence supporting the claim." Lucy's gasp was soft, almost lost beneath the rustle of papers and the murmuring of the few onlookers. "The settlement will reflect the prenuptial agreement terms, adjusted for the circumstances," the judge concluded, marking the end of the session. As we filed out, Lucy's hand brushed mine, an accident of two small spaces. She looked up, eyes searching mine for something, forgiveness, perhaps, or just a remnant of what we used to have. "I hope one day you can forgive me," she whispered. I pulled my hand back, the finality of the judge's words still echoing. "I hope one day I can too," I said, not sure whether I meant it. Outside, the sky had cleared, but the storm within me raged on. Revenge had tasted bittersweet. I had won, yes, but at what cost? The love we once shared was now a casualty of war, a memory tainted by betrayal and darkened by retribution. The intrigue of my revenge plan had played out, but as I walked away from the courthouse, the weight of my actions bore down on me. What had I truly gained? And what had I lost forever? Months had passed since the divorce, and the bitterness that had once consumed me had settled into a cold, calculating drive. The legal victory had been hollow, a Pyrrhic victory that neither healed the wounds nor silenced the whispers of betrayal. If anything, it fueled a deeper, more insidious plan for revenge. Lucy had moved on, or so it seemed from the fragments of her life that reached me through mutual acquaintances. She was living in a smaller apartment, her social media profile scrubbed clean of our shared memories. But the true deception was yet to be revealed, the kind that would shatter her newfound peace completely. I had spent weeks planning, waiting for the perfect moment when she would be vulnerable. It came one late autumn evening when Lucy was scheduled to speak at a community event about overcoming personal adversity, a subject she now knew too well. The irony wasn't lost on me. The venue was modest, a local library where she would feel safe, unguarded. I arrived early, blending into the sparse crowd with a nondescript hat and glasses. As she took the stage, her voice was steady, her story polished. But I knew the truth behind the facade. As Lucy spoke of resilience, I prepared my final move. From my pocket, I pulled out a series of photos, images of her not with her gym trainer, but with someone else, someone she trusted. I had hired a private investigator who had uncovered the whole sordid affair. The real betrayal wasn't just her infidelity, but whom she had been unfaithful with, her best friend's husband. With the crowd hanging on her every word, I made my way to the front, the photos ready. As I approached, Lucy's eyes caught mine, recognition flashing through her shock. I tossed the photos onto the stage, scattering them like leaves in the wind. "What is this?" Lucy faltered, her narrative interrupted as she bent to pick up a photo, her face draining of color. "The truth," I said loudly, my voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "Not just a cheater, but a betrayer of friends." The room erupted into chaos, whispers turning into shouts as people pressed forward to see the proof of her duplicity. Lucy tried to speak, to salvage her talk, but the damage was done. Her words were drowned out by the cacophony of disillusioned voices. As she fled the stage, I felt a surge of vindictive satisfaction. This was the revenge I had envisioned, exposing her not just to me, but to everyone. Lucy had built her new identity on lies, and I had stripped it away, ruthlessly. Weeks later, I learned that Lucy had left town, her reputation in ruins. The friend whose husband she had betrayed had confronted her, and the fallout had been catastrophic. They said Lucy had become a ghost of herself, her social circles closed to her permanently. Sitting alone one evening, the weight of my actions pressed down on me. The silence was suffocating, the loneliness a stark reminder of what my quest for revenge had cost me. Yes, Lucy had betrayed me, but in my pursuit of vengeance, I had lost parts of myself I would never recover. As I turned over the photos one last time, a realization dawned on me. The hatred of betrayal had not only parted us forever, but had also hollowed out my own capacity for forgiveness. In destroying Lucy, I had also dismantled the better parts of my past. With a weary sigh, I tossed the photos into the fire, watching as the flames consumed them. The ashes fluttered up the chimney, like the last remnants of a love that had once burned so brightly. Now, only the echoes of vengeance remained, a cold comfort in the stillness of my solitary existence. The final chapter closed on a note of irrevocable separation, not just of two people, but of who I had once been and who I had become. The intrigue and the deception had ended, leaving behind a landscape altered by the harshness of retribution.